So hello everyone, my name is Julia Hinka. I am the Nature Store Manager for the Friends of Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and this is our 25th year supporting Ohio's only national wildlife refuge complex with youth development, public use projects, and most recently land acquisition and restoration. We are located along the southern shore of Lake Erie near Oak Harbor, in some of the most critical wetland habitats in the world. If you are interested in learning more about us and what we do, we're going to put a link in the chat in just a moment. The link will point you in the right direction to become a member, make a tax-deductible donation, and even shop our nature store. Today, I am joined by Jeff Finn. He is our private lands biologist, and he has graciously joined us today to share a program about what he does at work. And I'm very excited because honestly, I don't even know, and I see him all the time at work. Before we begin, we're going to ask that everyone stays muted. And if you have any questions as we're going, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll try and address them as we go. And I'll turn it over to Jeff to get started.
I like, there's a constant wonder about what I do. And unfortunately, a lot of it's from the staff I work with, but yeah, it's a little bit of everything, and hopefully by the end of the presentation here, you'll have a better idea of what I do and where we do it and all of that good stuff. I am going to share my screen. I've got a little PowerPoint started here. Okay. So yeah, like Julia said, I am Jeff Finn, private lands biologist here at Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge. I cover 19 counties in Northwest Ohio. And what we do is basically provide private landowners with habitat restoration assistance. And we'll get into that a little bit more here as we go. Just a little bit about me. Graduated from college in '97 and again in 2000, and worked for a while as a wildlife specialist in Seneca County, working on farm bill programs, which essentially I was doing the same thing, helping private landowners restore habitat. Then I moved to Pennsylvania for a while with the federal government. NRCS, a little app there shows mostly where I worked while I was over there. And again, working on farm bill programs, helping private landowners do habitat work. And then in 2006, this position came open and I managed to get back to Ohio. I'm originally from Hinckley, which is a half-hour south of Cleveland. Never really intended on getting back to Ohio, just happened to have a cool position that opened up here, and I'm glad it did. So that's me when I first arrived. There's only 3 of us in that photo that are still here. I'm not sure which of the 3 of us is going to last the longest, but I found this picture and I realized that I've really aged, and I'm not sure why, but it's kind of fun to look back. It's Eddie. Funny story, the second day that I worked here, Eddie comes into my office and he says, hey, do you want to go shoot some swans? And I thought this was some kind of ethics test, you know, new job, Fish and Wildlife Service. But then he explained these were invasive swans. And so I said, heck yeah, let's go. We go out there. There's a guy from the state that's already shooting at him with his rifle. We have 2 shotguns with us. This is the second day of work. He hands me a shotgun with a bunch of shells. And mind you, there's training for everything with the federal government, but apparently there's no training required to handle firearms and shoot at stuff. So they're shooting away at these swans, and then we realize that they're coming right at us. You know, they're big birds, they're having trouble getting off the water. And by the time we realize it, they're right on us. I'm shucking shells into the shotgun and we start shooting, and they're falling all around us. And the second one I shot falls right on top of Eddie's new work truck. And you're talking like a 20-pound bird from like 30 yards up. So that was my second day on the job. And I said after that, I was like, I think I'm going to like this place. Eddie wasn't too impressed with the dent on his truck, but he got over it. Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program. This is what I do. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has its own little program called the Partners for Fish and Wildlife that I administer in the counties that I cover. And basically, what we do is provide technical and financial assistance to private landowners to restore all different types of habitat. And you know, we pride ourselves on being really efficient, really economical. We make our funds go really far. You know, our typical funding in a year is anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000. So, I mean, you can imagine how much I would get done if that's all I had to work with, but we're pretty resourceful. We partner a lot with other agencies and organizations to make our funds go a lot further. We do a lot of the work ourselves. So yeah. So this is what we do. You know, a lot of times landowners will get in touch with us. They have a piece of property that they're trying to enhance or restore. You know, unfortunately, a lot of times those properties they're some of like the most neglected and just rotten pieces of property, and the landowners want to turn them into this gem. And I like to say a lot of the times we're successful. And this one here is a great example. This is just a wet field of reed canary grass with some degraded dikes around it. It was all covered in cottonwoods and trees. And this is when Mark Witt and I actually used our own fish and wildlife equipment, our dozers and excavators, and went in there and restored the dikes, restored the hydrology, and it turned out really awesome. Sorry. So how do we do this? You know, most of what we do is wetland restoration. And this example here is from Williams County. So when the landowner gets in touch with us, we'll do a little preliminary work. We'll get some aerial photos of their property, get the soils map that lays over top of it, get a feel for where the hydric soils are and what might be possible with restoring wetlands. You can see, can everybody see my cursor? So you can see this area here is hydric soil on the soil map, and that is that low spot out in this field. And so what we'll do then is we'll go out and survey the site with survey equipment, figure out a engineering design on where we need to put dikes and water control structures, and then we'll find contractors to go ahead and do the work if we're not doing it ourselves. And so this is that same property, that same summer, after we broke some tile, put a little, just a short length of dike along the one end, and all of a sudden we've got a wetland, and eventually we'll have some plant response there. This was shortly after we restored it, so the plant response wasn't quite there yet. But that's kind of how it usually goes. I talked about water control structures. You know, this is an example of an agri-drain water control structure that we use most of the time. You know, the dike is running this way, and you'll set this in there, and this will give the landowner the ability to control water levels within the restored wetland. And so the water will come in one end. There's boards in this box that dictate how high the water is going to be. So the water will come in one side. Once it gets high enough, it'll spill over and then go out the other pipe. We use those on pretty much every restoration that we do. Water management is really crucial to wetland management. You have to be able to manipulate the water to get vegetation response, to control invasive species, all that kind of stuff. Another example out in Williams County that we did, this one we were super lucky. All we had to do was put in a couple 100 feet of new dike where that dozer is, and it backed up probably 20 acres of new wetland that was previously drained, and it turned out to be some of the prettiest wetland that I've done. I think I have another picture here of it. Yeah, there's the rest of it. You know, the landowner was so ecstatic because he had just stared at this just ugly field for most of his life, and then all it took was a little excavation and voila. It's another example. This is right into Williams County. This is actually the Ohio Turnpike right there where you can see the vehicles. And this used to be an old borrow area for the overpasses on the turnpike. This was one of the worst sites that I had come across. There was basically no topsoil on it. It's all subsoil. It was just weedy and pretty barren. And then all we had to do, there was actually one tile that was running through this field, and we broke that tile and diked up along the east end and did some excavation out here to create some different water levels, and it turned out great. Sometimes on these wetland restorations, it's just as easy as breaking the subsurface drain tile to create the wetland. And if you do this long enough, breaking drain tile is kind of it's kind of rewarding. And the bigger ones you can break, the more rewarding it is. This one happened to be a 15-inch county main tile, which it's kind of like a trophy tile. You don't really get to break a lot of those. And all we had to do is break it apart, and it restored the hydrology to this 30-acre field immediately. Sometimes things do not go as well as you hope. This was early in my career here. I had a contractor running our dozer, which that's our dozer. He called me and said, I got stuck and this is what I came out to. So then our maintenance guy here at the refuge brought out our brand new excavator to get the dozer out, and he proceeded to get it stuck. Now, this is a brand new excavator. We are out in the middle of nowhere. This is the marsh that we're in, and this is the location that we are at. There is nothing even close to us that we could tie onto or winch off of. And what we were in there, we hit a pocket of this organic muck. It's like really spongy, really doesn't have a bottom. And this thing was slowly sinking all night. We had to get another contractor in. He couldn't be there till the next day. I didn't sleep a wink that night, knowing that the thing was slowly still sinking. He finally got out there I ended up cutting about 20 trees down, and all we did was move the trees over. They'd lift the front end of the stuck excavator and shove trees underneath it. And then they lift the back end up, shove trees underneath it. It took all day to get it out, but we eventually got it out. I'm kind of glad it happened early in my career, because now little mix up or mistakes really, they don't seem that bad to me anymore. We almost lost a $300,000 excavator. Some other things we do a lot of invasive species work. We've had several different times where we've done some aerial applications in the area. A lot of times we'll get 10, 20 different landowners together, and we'll contract out with one applicator to go and treat all the different landowners, and we provide cost share for that. This one here, they're spraying Phragmites. We also do a lot of the spraying ourselves. We have some fun toys to do it with, but again, they're only fun until you get them stuck. But they're super handy. Some other stuff that we do some Savanna work. Most of the Savanna work in our area is over in the Oak Openings region. We did some for Kitty Todd Nature Preserve, and basically we took our own equipment over there, and we were just getting rid of a lot of the aspen and early successional stuff that was coming up within their Savanna areas. Savannas are typically, you want mature trees, maybe 5 mature trees per acre, and then it's grassland kind of all around them. So they're kind of hard to maintain without fire and without a lot of work, especially in this neck of the woods. But they're super productive, and they have a lot of unique species that hang out in them. We also do fish barrier removals. This was an example of a fish barrier that we removed. To explain that a little bit, these low-head dams and these smaller culvert-sized crossings, they're really restrictive with aquatic species moving up and downstream. And so what we'll do is we'll go in and remove them, put in more fish-friendly structures like big box culverts that they can move through, that they don't really hesitate to go in and out of. And then they can access a lot more of the habitat that they want to. A lot of times in Southeast Ohio, we do them to benefit the eastern hellbender, which is not doing well. If you're not familiar with them, they're super cool. They're like a foot-long salamander. Just a really cool animal that's really not doing well, but these fish barrier removals really help them access a lot more habitat. I would say next to wetlands, our grassland restorations are probably the second most common thing that we do. This can be as simple as, a crop field that they no longer want to farm. We'll just come in, we'll figure out a seed mix that is appropriate for those soils. There's usually a little bit of pre-treatment, like an herbicide application or something like that. And then we'll go in and no-till seed the native grasses and wildflowers in. And then there's usually a little bit of follow-up after that, but it's more of a waiting game. We've been focusing a lot on pollinator restorations lately. I'm sure everybody's aware pollinators aren't doing well. So a lot of the grassland restorations that we would normally do are now more targeted towards pollinators. We use a lot more diverse seed mix that is blooming throughout the year to provide food and habitat for those pollinator species all throughout the year. We also do some reforestation stuff. This was our YCC crew, and our YCC crew leader, they helped me do one of the reforestation projects in Seneca County. We'll just plant 2 to 3 year old tree seedlings, and we usually put tree tubes on them to protect them from the deer and the rodents for the first couple years. And once they get above that browsing point, they're usually pretty well off, but the deer, they really hammer them without those tree tubes. One of the best things about my job is the people I meet. And I think this Lake Erie Marsh region probably has some of the most great people that I've met. There's a lot of characters. I keep trying to talk people into doing a reality show around here. But I think it's the people that I work with on these projects that make it really special. This is kind of a local legend. His name's Ollie St. Clair. He's been a marsh manager his whole life. And when I first got here, he'd always take me around. His dad managed the marsh that he managed, and his grandpa also managed that same marsh. This is that big marsh that I got stuck in, just coincidentally. But it's being able to soak up knowledge from people like him makes my job a lot cooler. I always equate it to, somebody that plays basketball. This would be like riding around with Michael Jordan. That's kind of how cool Ollie is and how much respect he has in the area. That's his dog Dozer. He didn't know I took this picture. He's not the type of guy that would really like you taking pictures of him, but I had to get a picture. I kind of snapped it when he wasn't looking. We can talk about that one later if we have more time. So story behind that. Besides my normal day-to-day work as private lands biologist, being here at the refuge, you get roped into quite a few things. I do some arborist work on the side. And so we had this eagle that needed re-nested. His nest had blew down during a storm, and he had to get placed with other eaglets that were of similar size. I was picturing a small little eaglet, and then they showed up, and this is what I had to get up in a nest 50 foot high in the top of a cottonwood tree. It was in a bag. So you climb up to the top of the tree, you pull the bag up, and then somehow you're supposed to get this eagle with these huge talons up and over the nest. And meanwhile, there's 3 other eaglets of the same size in this nest getting nervous. And so the first time I try to kind of lob this thing into the nest, he does not come out of the bag all the way, and he's flailing around up there, and he comes rolling out in the bag over the side of the nest. And I just happened to be right there, and I was able to grab the bag, and I got a little better stance and got my wits about me and gave him another push over the nest, and he popped out of the bag and everything was good, but things almost went sideways real quick. Some other things I get involved with, I'm lucky enough I get to do a lot of fire stuff, travel all over. This was one of our camps. I took a 20-person crew up to Alaska a few years back, and we were camping north of the Arctic Circle, right along the Yukon River. And so that's kind of where we lived for a couple of weeks. I think fire is one of the favorite parts of my job. It breaks up the monotony a little bit. The big burnout we did on the Mustang fire in Idaho. This is some prescribed fire that we did at Cedar Point National Wildlife Refuge. That smoke actually showed up on the Doppler radar that night. And then another trip up to Seney National Wildlife Refuge. We had a 1-hour Marshmaster ride into the fire every day because it was way back in the wilderness, and that was the only way to get to it. So what we do not do it alone very often. We have a lot of great partners. These are the 5 partners that we work with the most. And that's how we make our funding go a lot further. Everybody will find a project and then we all kind of piggyback on it or help out how we can to get it done. And working with these folks, their staff is tremendous. They make my job really enjoyable. I like to think that they feel the same about us. We just all work together. So it's a great group of partners. So we'll go through a couple slides here, and these are just kind of a snapshot. This is just a small area. This is just west and southwest of Port Clinton. It's a map of projects that I've done recently through the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program. And so you can see it's pretty spread out and they're starting to connect a little bit, but I was talking about partners and how they are important. When you add in like the NRCS and Soil and Water Conservation District with all of their CRP and CREP restorations, and then you look at where all the state wildlife areas are, and then we have a really rich amount of waterfowl clubs in the area. They're the reason that most of our wetlands are still here. And those are all pretty much protected in perpetuity. And then you figure in all the National Wildlife Refuge property, and you can really start to see the pieces of the puzzle come together. The landscape's not so fragmented anymore. You start to get these really good corridors, these really good chunks of wetland complexes. And but I think I want to drive the point home that it takes a lot of partners and a lot of different organizations to really make a difference on the landscape. And that's my spiel. Those are my 2 rugrats. They were 6 and 8 at the time, so they occupy a lot of my time these days. But I guess we can open it up for questions or any discussion that anybody would want to have.
We had one question come in pretty early from Tom, and I was kind of wondering it myself too. Do landowners have to sell you land, or do they retain ownership when you're doing these projects?
Yeah, so it remains in their ownership. It doesn't have to be open to public hunting or anything. It's just like it was before we got there. It's yours to do with what you want. So yeah, the only thing that we ask is in exchange for money that we spend is that you keep that habitat in place for, it's usually either a 10 or a 15-year agreement that you keep that habitat in place.
Is there a lot of work that the landowners have to do in those 10 to 15 years to maintain what you've put in place?
Yeah, I mean, every site's different. There's some sites are a little more problematic. Maybe they didn't have good weed management in the past, or maybe they had a pretty good bout of invasive species before we got there. So yeah, I mean, every site responds differently. You just when you think you've figured out the perfect way to do these things. They throw you a curveball, and you'll do 2 wetland restorations right next to each other, same soils, same type of crop field. One will come back dog hair thick of cattail, and then the other will look like exactly how you wanted. So it's a little bit of a crapshoot.
Do those landowners keep your phone number and have you come back out and help them?
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's the more of these you do, you have the more callbacks, and it starts to occupy more and more of your time. You do 10 to 15 projects every year, and after 10 years, you've got, maybe 20% of those people are probably asking for some attention every year. So it's a lot of running around, but I enjoy it.
And how do you select which projects to work on? Do you usually have far more people looking for your help than you're able to help, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we really don't do any outreach or marketing. I know that sounds bad, but with our limited budget, we always have a list of people waiting for projects. I'll say that. And I just feel like if we did more outreach or marketing, we would just frustrate people. They'd be waiting a lot longer to get some funding and projects done. So it's been working well the way it is. It's all word of mouth. You do a project for one person, and then they tell their neighbor or friend, and it works out really good like that.
And do you have anyone else can ask questions too? I don't mean to be taking up all the question time here, but is there a minimum amount of acreage that you look for, or maximum, or does it just depend on?
No, that's what's nice about our program. There's no sideboards on acreage. It could be a half acre, it could be 100 acres. It's we usually never turn anybody away just because of the size of a project. If it's really small and not cost feasible, then that's one thing. But on size alone, it's not an issue.
Jeff, this is Tom, and I'd like to follow up on my question about land ownership. Essentially, what's in it for you, Fish and Wildlife Service, to do all of this work?
Well,
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't. You can.
No, that's fine.
The goal of our program is to restore habitat that benefits federal trust species. Migratory birds, species of special concern, endangered species. So that's what we get. We get the benefits to federal trust species. They're going to use that habitat at some point in their life cycle and some point in their migration. So that's what we hang our hat on.
Well, Jeff, I presume you have to account for your accomplishments to somebody to sustain your existence. Can you tell us about that?
Oh yeah, it's the government. Somebody's counting the beans, of course. We have a pretty good system that is specifically for our program that we report into. We have to basically map out in the system where our projects are, how much we spent on them, how much in kind we got, how much partner contribution we got, what species it benefited. So, and then that all gets tallied up and sent on to the higher ups.
Okay, Jeff, that's very good. I understand that. Now, in the Friends of Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge annual report, you report that that you have partnered with several other organizations, such as those you showed at the beginning of your program, to leverage almost $700,000 from outside sources. Is that necessary that you bring in that much money, and what do you do with it?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. Locally here, we have a enhanced version of CRP, which is a farm bill program that NRCS administers. And so a lot of landowners will enroll into that. These are typically larger projects that have a lot of dirt work associated with them. So they'll have a lot of funds coming in from NRCS to do most of the project. And then we come in and we'll do the restoration in areas that aren't eligible for that program, or we can pay for things like water control structures and other things that those programs don't pay for. So, we could have $10,000 into a project, and then NRCS has $100,000 into the same project. And that's how we kind of come up with the match. And we also have a lot of money coming in via Ducks Unlimited right now through the Great Lakes Fish and Wildlife Restoration Act funding. That's been a huge help. We've been getting a little over $100,000 a year in funding from that grant source. And so DU basically helps us cover costs on projects that are above what we could cover. I hope that explains or answers your question.
Yeah, it sure does. Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
Does anyone else have a question for Jeff before we let you get back to your sultry night here? It's been nice to take a break and come inside in the air conditioning.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's warmer in this office right now or outside.
That's not good.
No.
Amy and I have the same question.
Yeah, so so we help landowners with prescribed burns every now and then, and it happened to be on that. I don't know why everything happens in that same club, but we were doing a prescribed burn at the same club that I got stuck in, and we get done with the burn, and I mean, we ran a raging fire through that place, like Phragmites, like 30-foot flames, like a real rager. And we get done with it, and I'm walking around and seeing how it burnt, and I start finding all of these little bombs and mortars scattered all over the place. And I get over there and I ask Ollie St. Clair, the manager, I was like, what is going on back here? And he goes, I probably should have told you this used to be the artillery range for Ares ammunitions. I was like, well, that would have been good information beforehand. Like, I don't know. He didn't know if they were inert or duds or what, but it's just a little unnerving when you're walking around and start finding unexploded ordnance everywhere. Just some of the fun things I get into.
You're kind of living like every kid's dream job. Like, you set fires, you play with big machines, play in the dirt, travel. Is there anything about your job that isn't fun?
No, and like it, honestly, the guy who left this job, I ran into him shortly after I got here, and he looked at me and he goes, you have the best job in the service. And I said, well, why'd you leave then? And he was kind of shrugged, and he's like, well, a family wanted to move back to Michigan and blah, blah, blah. But he was spot on. If there's a better job in the service, I'd like to see it. I mean, I have the attitude of the job is what you make it, but it's got some pretty cool sideboards to work with in it. If it's not fun, you're doing something wrong.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, if nobody else has a question, we can let you go and get back to the air conditioning car then, since you're hot in your office, but. Oh, Oliver, you can jump on your mic and ask that one.
Oh, Jeff knows all too well. I'll let him share that story.
And so, yeah, Oliver was one of the interns that I've been fortunate to have over the years. And I don't know what, he was out doing something on his own one day out on the refuge, and he sends me a picture of himself holding a baby coyote. And, you know, my first thought as kind of a supervisor, which I'm really not a good supervisor, but my first thought was, oh my God, put that thing down. Like, what if you get bit? The amount of paperwork, all that stuff. But so he named him, what was it, Jebediah, but we had more sightings of the same coyote over the years. So it's been a kind of an ongoing joke of that particular coyote.
So I'll quick, Jeff, I'll jump in and tell my side of the story. So I was off doing something. Yes, I caught this baby coyote. I get back and someone along the lines had told Jeff what I had done. So I get back, Jeff's sitting at his desk that he's at now. And he says, let me see the picture. He said, that is so cool. And then he looks me dead in the eyes. He's like, never do that again. You don't know how much paperwork I would have to have done if you would have gotten bit. So.
Yeah. Oliver is another one of those people. Like I said, like one of the best parts about this job is the people you meet and the relationships you have. I think most of my good friends are people I've done projects with or people that I've worked with here. And I think it just makes the job awesome.
Amy showed me one of your restoration projects that's in the shape of a blue goose. So that one's always stuck out to me. And I was surprised. I was looking for it on the map you were showing, but I think it's more west. But
I could probably find it pretty soon.
I was on your map. My house was in the very corner, and someday I hope I can put in a blue goose somewhere nearby, so that goose isn't alone.
Yeah,
Not me. You would have to do it, but
I'll share it here real quick.
yeah, the goose one's cool.
Yeah, so you know, doing the same old square around wetlands gets a little boring every now and then. This is actually right across the street from the refuge, kind of, and it's the refuge blue goose. So we kind of staked it out, and the contractor did a really good job, and you can still see it when you fly over it. It's good. It's got a lot of edge, and it's cool.
Yep, that one's really cool. All right, Jeff. Well, thank you for explaining what you do. It's very important work, very fun work. And if anyone wants to jump on our website, I shared the link, but we'd love for you to make a donation, and the Friends group is doing whatever we can to help out the refuge and support projects like what Jeff is working on. So
We are very excited about the partnership with the Friends group coming up here. It's going to be a game changer for our program.
well,
Thanks for everybody for attending. I find it flattering that anybody wants to listen to me ramble, but I appreciate people making the time.
Hey, Jeff, before you go, I would ask that you elaborate on what you just said, because I've been trying to find it. The partnership with Friends of Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge. Amy talked about it yesterday in our board meeting. What is the partnership and how is it going to benefit you?
Well, we have a lot of loopholes with contracting and purchasing these days. You know, basically right now I'm restricted to paying for stuff with a credit card. Whereas in the past, I've been able to, let's say you had a project, I've been able to come to you, basically get a voided check from you, set you up in our system, and then I could reimburse you directly for the project costs. But now that's not how it is. And the new co-op agreement with the Friends group will allow me to go back to a similar situation that we had before. It allows us to be more fluid. We can get projects done faster, service landowners better, get the stuff we need quicker. Otherwise, everything would have to go, if we didn't purchase stuff with a credit card, it has to go through contracting. And I will tell you, we've been trying to get this cooperative agreement through contracting for 5 weeks now, if that gives you any idea of how long it would take a landowner to get through the process.
Yeah, Amy said that it was a pain in the butt trying to get it through, approved or signed. So is this a pilot program? Are we the first one that ever done this kind of thing?
I believe that you are the first friends group that is partnering with a co-op agreement with the Partners program to do something like this. Yes, we have, like in Wisconsin, they've done it with the Wisconsin Waterfowl Organization, a similar co-op agreement, but yeah, I'm fairly certain you'll be the first friends group that would do something like this.
That's what we do. We're kind of pushing the envelope. And
Well, that director of yours is, I can't say enough things about her. She's been tremendous. I was here with the friends group before she arrived, and it's night and day now.
how about that, Amy?
Not to say anything bad about the previous members of the friends group, but she has really turned it around.
Yeah, Amy's good at finding loopholes and making things happen, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus you're scared to tell her no on anything.
Well, she's watching right now. I can't say anything bad. Well, thank you all for joining. We have some more great programs coming up. I think our next one is about how we made our building bird friendly, which will be a great one to tune into too, so you understand why we have paint and stickers all over the windows at the refuge. So if you're interested in that and any upcoming programs, check out our website. And stay cool tonight, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Julia. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Julia. We'll see you.